Everybody, I am happy to be back here for our fourth and final installment in this communication series that we are doing here for the different attachment styles. And so the way this works is I will start by giving you some content delivery, explaining a little bit about today's topic, and then at the end, I will create some time and space to answer questions as they pop up. So I invite you to pose your questions there in the comments or in the chat as we go along, and I will make some time to address them at the end. So let's just dive right in. Now, communication is an essential element of every relationship, and it plays a crucial role in building and maintaining strong and healthy bonds with our partners. However, effective communication, it really requires more than just talking and listening. It involves understanding each other's perspectives, your emotions, and your needs, and oftentimes subtext. And so when it comes to partners with secure attachment, communication tends to be smoother and more successful until they encounter someone with insecure attachment. And why might that be? Well, today we're going to talk about 6 effective communication tips with secure partners. And in this video, we're going to explore the reasons why individuals with insecure attachment might find it challenging to communicate with their secure partners. Okay, and how we might turn that around. We're going to examine the strengths of securely attached individuals, and we're also going to look at 6 tips for communicating effectively with them. And so by the end of this segment, you will feel more confident and better prepared to effectively communicate with securely attached individuals. You will also have a greater appreciation for the strengths and the benefits that secure people bring to relationships. And with these newfound skills, you will be well on your way to creating that strong bond and a thriving relationship in your life. Now, if you decide that you are ready to put these tips into action, I have a quiz in the caption of this video, and it's going to tell you how insecure attachment styles may be affecting your relationships, as well as giving you an opportunity to turn that around. So if you want to learn more about that, you can just click the link in the caption of this video. Now, before we dive into it, who am I and why should you listen to me on these topics? Well, my name is Brianamacwilliam, and I'm a licensed and board certified creative arts therapist with more than 15 years in the field, helping adults struggling with insecure attachment attract and cultivate those soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want. And I do this using my trademark method, which is a trauma-informed somatic approach to healing attachment styles within a spiritual framework. So if you like what you see and hear today, make sure that you like, subscribe, follow along for more, because I put out more videos on related topics. And I like to take all comments and feedback into consideration when creating new series like this, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. So with that, let's just dive right into our first topic for today. And I wanted to start out by answering the question, well, why would individuals with insecure attachment find it difficult to communicate with secure people? Aren't secure people supposed to be these kind of miracle workers? Well, generally speaking, people with insecure attachment, they have a difficult time trusting others and forming close relationships. And so the insecure partners may have experienced rejection or neglect in the past, and that makes them fearful of getting too close to other people. And so insecurely attached individuals, they can find it difficult to communicate because they have a tendency to discount or to deny their own feelings. And so they may struggle to express their emotions or their needs honestly or openly because they're afraid of being rejected or misunderstood. But then they start inducing distrust in others because our secure partners can sense that incongruency within them. So it can lead to, for the insecure partner, that might lead to becoming shut down or feeling more defensive when the secure partner calls them on it, or when the secure partner makes emotional requests or offers a constructive criticism. Okay. And that creates a barrier between the two of them and starts to eliminate real connection and understanding. Okay. Additionally, our insecure partners may be prone to mistrust, and they might misinterpret the intentions of their partners. And that causes undue stress in the relationship as well as mixed signals in communication. So when we are communicating with a secure partner, the insecure partner could also misinterpret the secure partner's behavior through a disproportionately negative lens, okay? Even when their partner is trying to be supportive and caring. So for example, secure individuals tend to be more confident and trusting in their relationships. They're comfortable with emotional intimacy, and they express their emotions and needs as they arise quite directly. They also don't take things so personally, and they have an expectation that their partner is going to do the same. But this is not always true for an insecure partner, right? They have a tendency to take things a bit more personally. They're usually sensitive and afraid of sensitive to and afraid of emotional honesty in relationships and direct communication. They tend to communicate more indirectly and through a lot of subtext, right? So insecure partners can sometimes experience directness as being harsh, right? If a secure partner accurately identifies and says out loud what they think their partner is thinking and feeling, and they call attention to it before the insecure partner is ready to acknowledge or process the feelings that they are having that are being called out, then they might say they feel like they're being attacked, or they consider the kind of focused attention a form of criticism or judgment. Secure partners also tend to respond to their significant other's emotional cues in supportive and empathic ways, and they're typically mobilized to do something to support them. So sometimes insecure partners interpret that intent as a negative appraisal of their agency and their capacity. It's as if their secure partner is assuming that they can't do it for themselves, which they then experience as a form of condescension, maybe emotional manipulation, or an attempt at controlling them. Okay. And so then the secure partner might find it challenging to understand that perspective, and that leads to more confusion and frustration and typically escalating conflicts. Now, if you want to learn more about this and how the different attachment styles can present themselves and come into conflict like this, I recommend checking out the video on my YouTube channel, Attachment Styles, a Basic Overview. So this video is going to provide an overview of the 4 attachment styles and help you to understand get a better understanding of these different dynamics that can play out when we have these different pairings. Okay, so now we understand how and why we might experience conflicts in communication, even when one of the partners might be secure. So let's talk about some of the strengths that our secure partners bring to the table. So securely attached partners have a lot of strengths that can make them great communicators in relationships. And so number 1, that includes emotional regulation. So secure individuals are really good at regulating their emotions, which means that they can turn themselves into kind of a rubber band. They can expand in a flexible way to hold their discomfort so that they can navigate through and repair conflicts fairly, right? It allows them to remain both within the situation as well as maintain an objective perspective so that they can find solutions in a conflict, okay? They're also very empathic. Secure individuals have a high level of empathy, and it allows them to understand and connect with their partner's emotions and their needs. They're typically trusting. They have a deep sense of trust in their partner, and so that tends to make them feel safe enough to say what they're feeling, how they're feeling, and when they are feeling it, right, in a more direct way. Generally speaking, they typically are better communicators because of this, and they are usually very clear about why the way that they feel, what they feel, and they're also usually very savvy about what would make them feel better when they're feeling upset. So they can tease through the subtleties of their emotions to be able to accurately identify how you might be able to repair with them. So their clarity in communication is very helpful. Additionally, they tend to be optimistic and they have a positive attitude, right? And so when you have a positive outlook on life in relationships, you typically assume the best of your partner, and that makes them more resilient and adaptable to challenges that might arise. Okay. If you're interested in delving into the strengths of secure attachment more in depth, I do have a video on my YouTube channel, Secure Attachment 101, What is Secure Attachment in Relationships? And so in this video, I talk a lot more specifically about what secure attachment means in a relationship and how you might be able to recognize and cultivate that. Okay. So again, if any questions, thoughts, or reflections are coming up, I would love to see those in the chat or in the comments below. And now let's just dive right into our 6 tips. So the first tip, be humble and curious. So instead of leading with suspicion or a kind of defensive energy, because we are essentially stemming from, our energy is stemming from a place of being afraid of getting hurt, we might try to assume that whatever you're discussing is not about you. Just assume that it's not about you until proven otherwise, okay? And instead, lead with curiosity. And so you can do this while still honoring your feelings and your needs and making space for someone else's. So, for example, I felt hurt when you said that. Can you say it another way so that maybe I'm able to hear it better? I want to understand, but this is starting to feel unsafe. Right? So secure partners, they're really going to appreciate your candor, and they will want to contribute to you feeling safe enough to ask more questions so that you can understand them better. Everybody wants to be understood, right? So our second tip, and this is a tip that I actually recommend to everyone, regardless of your attachment style. And when you watch the other 3 videos on the effective communication with the other 3 attachment styles, you will see that I recommend this as well. And that is active listening. So listening actively to your partner's perspective is supremely important. So this is when you are trying to understand their emotions and their needs from their perspective, rather than waiting for where you get to insert your rebuttal, right? And so you want to avoid interrupting or judging. And if you don't know, don't make assumptions. Ask questions. Be humble and curious when you don't know or you're not sure. You also want to be mindful of the conclusions that you're jumping to in your head, and make sure that you confirm those assumptions before you act on them. So, for example, when you are actively listening, you might say something like, well, it sounds like you're frustrated, and I'm assuming that means that you're thinking XYZ. Is that true? Am I reading this correctly? Okay, this is a form of paraphrasing and then mirroring what they're saying back to them. It's one of our 3 keys of compassionate communication. Okay. So the next tip, this one is to take responsibility. Okay. So you want to take responsibility for the impact of your behavior, even if you don't intend to hurt someone's feelings. So remember that there are 2 people participating in the relationship. Okay. And both of you have a right to feel safe and loved and to share that emotional space. So you want to try to put yourself in the other person's shoes and how they might be feeling from their perspective. This is called vicarious introspection. So for example, wow, I can see how that might upset you, and I know how awful that feels. I'm sorry I contributed to that feeling, and I would like to be part of the solution. Can you tell me how? Okay. And tip number 4, we want to focus on solutions instead of being problem obsessed. Okay. So when conflicts arise, we really want to focus on solutions that are going to work for both of you, rather than perseverating on the problem or hashing up things from the past, right? And you want to acknowledge the impact of what's happening here and now, because whatever happened in the past is alive and well in the here and now. We don't have to get caught up in the content of that, right? And we can do that by avoiding blame and criticism, and instead working towards a mutually satisfactory resolution. Okay. So for example, you have every right to feel that way, and I want to work together to make sure that both our needs are met moving forward. Let's make a plan to do it differently next time. Okay. Now the next tip is to be authentic. And what do I mean by that? Well, in other words, you want to be honest about how you're feeling when you're feeling it, and you want to ask for support when you need it. So you want to avoid taking on all the emotional labor onto yourself, and learn to lean on your partner when you need help. So for example, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. Can you help me with this? Or this is what would be really helpful for me, right? And you're opening it up so that you're making it a choice for your partner to contribute to your well-being. And I can guarantee you, if your partner is secure, they want to contribute to your well-being. And that is different than taking on full responsibility for it. Okay. And you don't want them to do that either, because that will create an imbalance of power dynamic in the relationship. So before we tackle the last tip, I want to just take a pause here and ask you, does any of this sound familiar? Have you ever used tips like this before, and what was the result in your experience? If you are secure, how would you respond to this approach? Let me know in the comments. I would love to know your experience. And so we have our last tip, and that is to assume the best. Okay. So assuming the best of your partner's intentions in a romantic relationship is really a crucial aspect of building trust and fostering healthy communication between you, particularly in times of conflict with insecure partners. So when we assume the best of our partner's intentions, we give them the benefit of the doubt, and we are much more likely to approach them with an open mind, with empathy, and with understanding. And so this approach allows us to see things from our partner's perspective, which can help us identify those misunderstandings and clarify the miscommunications early on and proactively. Moreover, assuming the best of our partner's intentions also allows us to avoid jumping to negative conclusions. It allows us to avoid becoming too defensive or overly critical or accusatory in communication. And so when we practice this mindset, we can create a safer and more positive environment for effective communication, and that leads to stronger relationships in the long run. So for a practical example, imagine that you came home from work and you're feeling tired and stressed, and your partner greets you with a seemingly insensitive comment like, you look like you had a rough day. What's wrong with you? Okay. Now, without assuming the best of your partner's intentions, you might interpret that comment as rude, uncaring, criticizing, or even accusatory, and that might lead you to a negative assumption and a defensive reaction. However, if you decide that you're going to assume that your partner has the best of intentions, you might believe that, well, maybe they're just genuinely concerned about me, and you might reframe that comment as an expression of empathy and an invitation towards sharing your feelings with them. Maybe they want to help you with whatever's wrong. Okay. So in this case, instead of responding defensively, you might respond by saying, yeah, you know what? I did have a rough day, and thank you for noticing. Do you have a minute to talk about it? I would love to vent. That would help a lot. Right? And so by assuming your partner's intentions, assuming that they have the best intentions for you, you can turn a potentially negative interaction into a positive one and open the door to healthier communication in your relationship. And I would argue, even if they said that, what's wrong with you? You look tired. What's wrong with you? Even if they said it with an intonation that sounds accusatory or critical, if you respond to them as if they were asking with genuine curiosity and care, it can switch something in them, and they flip from being evaluative and critical to being open and willing to be there for you. You can change and shift that energy in that moment simply by choosing to assume the best. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at our final thoughts on this. So I'm just going to start by quickly summarizing our 6 tips. Number 1, you want to be humble and curious. Number 2, you want to practice active listening. Number 3, we want to take responsibility for the impact of our actions instead of falling back on intention, right? The safety net of intention. We want to focus on solutions instead of being problem obsessed. And we want to be authentic, meaning we want to express how we are feeling when we are feeling it and in the moment so that we can nip it in the bud. And we also want to assume the best of our partners so that we can shift the energy in a positive and reparative direction. Okay. So securely attached individuals, they really have so many strengths that make them ideal communicators, including emotional regulation, empathy, trust. They typically are great communicators themselves. They have a positive attitude and so much more. And so by following these effective communication tips, we can start to build those stronger and healthier relationships, even if we ourselves have insecure attachment. Okay. And the benefits of learning to communicate effectively with secure partners are just manifold, really, because I would have you imagine, rather than your partner shutting down or running for the hills, what if they pulled you close and said, "Thank you for telling me. Let's work this out." Or being able to recognize and communicate your needs fearlessly and having your partner love you and respect you all the more for it. "I had no idea that you needed that, and I'm happy to know how to support you." Or knowing ahead of time how and why your partner might react to certain situations, and just the right things to say that will put them at ease and get them to listen to you. "You know what? That's not easy for me to hear, but I feel closer to you now that you told me." This is how secure partners respond, when we can approach them with a receptive attitude. And it's not a fantasy. It can be your reality, because all of that is possible for you. Okay. And you don't have to have it all figured out before you start reducing the conflict in your relationships. You don't have to be fully healed of all your emotional baggage before you can give a partner the benefit of the doubt, or they can start giving you the benefit of the doubt. And you don't have to avoid all arguments to find harmony in relationships. Oftentimes, arguments are how we get to a place of deeper understanding and intimacy. And you don't have to swallow all your needs and desires in order to keep a partner around, because when you do that, you effectively become emotionally unavailable to them, and then the chemistry dies. Okay. We want to get those needs vocalized so that you can know for sure if they are able to be met with this person. Okay. And you just want to remember that communication is a two-way street, and it takes effort and it takes practice to improve it. But with patience, empathy, and a commitment to understanding the other person, to being curious, to opening up and taking some risks and trusting in the universe, then individuals can create more secure and fulfilling relationships. And so if you would like some more support with that, again, I invite you to take the quiz in the caption of this video. There's going to be a little description of how insecure attachments could be affecting your relationships, and there will be a little special offer to help you put these tips into action. So I hope that you have enjoyed this segment and that you have a wonderful day. For those of you that are able to stick around, I can answer some questions there. I'm just going to take a peek over here at our chat box. "I feel hurt when you say it like that. Can you say it another way?" I like that. Thank you. I'm glad you like that. Let's see this question. "Would you advise assuming all the best in all exchanges, not just with partners? Would that make us broadly secure?" Well, I think that we can start by assuming the best, and then we need to use our discernment, right? So we start with showing up with a positive attitude, and that can oftentimes shift people towards a more secure position. I will say, in every situation, if you approach it from a more positive direction, you're much more likely to have positive outcomes. It's less likely if you're approaching it from a negative standpoint, for sure. But we also then need to use our discernment. So we can approach it with a positive attitude, and we can respond in a secure way. But then if someone, responds in a way that tears down your character, or in other words, shows up in a toxic way, now we have to use our discernment, and we have to select which of our boundaries we need to establish with this person. So we're going to be talking more about toxic communications in subsequent video series. But in essence, toxic communications are when someone falls back on the safety net of intention to avoid taking responsibility for the impact of their behaviors. Especially toxic communications are things like gaslighting. So when someone is basically trying to get you to distrust your own senses, right? It's trying to convince you that you're not seeing what you're seeing, feeling what you're feeling, or noticing what you're noticing, right? Toxic communications are when people try to violate your boundaries, right? They're not listening to the boundaries that you're asserting, okay? Or they're being disrespectful in some fashion, or they're being underhanded. So yes, I think we should assume the best in most exchanges, and then we should be implementing healthy discernment along with healthy boundaries. Okay, it's a great question. Thank you for all these tips. They deserve way more views. Oh, thank you. Let's see. I was thinking the same, perhaps assuming in this case that my significant other has the best of intentions. Yes. Yeah, I would definitely uh, encourage that, right? Because they're with you because they love you, because they want to be with you, right? So we want to assume that they want to be there. Thank you for sharing. Let's see. My girlfriend is avoidant. She told me she wants to get married to feel chosen. We're at an impasse where she needs marriage and I need affection to feel safe enough to propose. Any advice on talking through this? Well, so there's a couple things that you probably want to dig into there, and it's not all on you. Wanting to get married in order to feel chosen, I might get some flack for this, but that's not a reason to get married. Okay. That's an internal journey that she has to go on, because it doesn't matter how many people choose her, unless she chooses herself, that feeling is going to become manifest. Even if you get married, it will never be enough, and then she'll need to feel chosen in other ways. And that idea of me not being chosen, I'm never chosen, it's going to come up in repeated arguments or conflicts in a variety of forms. So I'm going to take a hard stance on this and say that's not a reason to get married. And if my girlfriend said that to me, I'd be like, whoa, you want to marry me because you want to feel chosen? That tells me you don't see me at all. And that's not a good choice for me. Like, that doesn't tell me anything about you respecting my character. That doesn't tell me anything about what you know you want for long-term commitment. That doesn't tell me anything about what, the different dimensions of compatibility that go into creating a long-term structure for the rest of my life, in which I'm going to feel seen, loved, experience affection, feeling chosen myself. Are you choosing me, or are you asking me to fill a void for you? So I'm assuming your perspective here, right? Now, if you feel like you need affection to feel safe enough to propose, on the flip side here, you need more than that to feel safe enough to propose. Why aren't you asking for more than that? And if you're just willing to propose marriage to someone because you think that will lead to affection, then that's a deeper inner story that you now need to be in conversation with, because that's the energetic equivalent of wanting to be chosen, isn't it? So the two of you have this vibe going on between you, and you're looking to the other one to solve the vibe. But the problem is you're both vibing on the same level, right? So one of you is going to have to shift out of that frequency. And it could happen very easily just by asking yourself the questions that I'm raising right now, right? What do I really want from long-term partnership? Is it just that I want affection? Is it just that I want to be chosen? These are things that can be supported in a long-term relationship, but this is the frosting on top. Okay. So I hope that doesn't sound super harsh, but I kind of feel like I need to offer a hard stance on that, because having been married and divorced and having gotten married for the wrong reasons the first time, I would definitely encourage you to look a lot deeper into that. Okay. Okay. My partner told me he felt suffocated at some point. I took this very hard, but I'm coming to understand it's not personal. Any suggestions of how or when to broach the subject in a secure manner? Well, so it just depends on, when you say broach the subject, what do you mean? So what are you trying to broach? What's your goal with that communication? What are you broaching, right? What are you trying to affect? And so I would start there, right? So what are you looking for? What are you looking for? And also looking at, some of this comes from thinking, like, when we don't really understand our boundaries, we don't really know what we want from relationships in general, we start thinking like, well, a relationship is what I can get from this person, right? And so now what you want, generally speaking, is attached to this person's boundary needs and priorities and whatnot. And so we fall into the habit of allowing somebody else to set the tone of how the relationship should go. So if the question is, well, how much space is too much and how much space is just enough, instead of waiting for them to tell you what it is, ask yourself, how much space do I want in a relationship? What would feel good to me, right? And so now we have a boundary around that. My need is that you text or call once in the morning and once before bed, and that we spend at least 2 date nights together throughout the week. This is in, probably the beginning stages of a relationship, right? But that's just to give you an example. If you're unable to meet me on that level, then I need to reevaluate my investment in this relationship. Now, of course, there's a level of degree of compromise in there. So maybe the person says, well, in the mornings, I'm just really grouchy. I don't feel comfortable like engaging in conversation, but I could give you a call after work. So maybe you're like, fine. I would prefer to have one in the morning and the evening, but I'm comfortable with a call in the evening as long as it's before 8 p.m. So I'm not sitting around all day waiting for that. I know it will come around that time. And as long as we get our 2 date nights in, right? Just as easy as that. Oh, well, that's too much for me. I don't think I can handle that. Okay, then I know that my needs for a longer term commitment are not going to be met here. So I can continue to date you casually because the sex is great and I enjoy seeing a movie with you every once in a while. But know that I'm going to continue looking for someone that can meet my needs for a long term commitment. Right? It's really just that simple. I think sometimes we overcomplicate this because of our attachment anxiety, right? Because we think we have all the stories attached to it. It's got to be with this person. Oh, I feel these amazing love chemicals, and so I got to make it work with them, and they got to tell me how they feel, and I got to pretzel myself to mold myself to what they want, so that I remain in close proximity to them. And that's like, those are attachment narratives. You know what I mean? Okay. I appreciate these live chats, especially yesterday. It described my husband and me to a T. Oh, I'm glad that was helpful. I don't think in her mind she feels as though she has everything she needs for a long-term relationship with me. So she's asking for me to get on the same page, but she can avoid it most of the time. So again, these are really vague terms, right? Get on the same page. What does that mean? Why don't you think she feels that you have everything she wants in a long-term relationship, right? And she has said she won't work on this because it's too emotionally exhausting and she doesn't know how and if she can change. I'm sorry, but come on. It's too exhausting to talk about what you want in a long-term relationship and to communicate what she would need to feel fulfilled. It's too exhausting to do that, and you're considering committing your life to someone who's already exhausted. I mean, that's marriage. That's marriage every single day. So I'm going to let you reread that for yourself. Okay. Wow, that was powerful. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. I know it's super painful, especially when we feel really attached to someone, but these are things, I'm sorry if it's exhausting, but that's what life is. That's what relationships are. So now you have to ask yourself, why are you committing to someone that's too exhausted to really get to know you? And now you've got your own narratives going on, right? Sometimes we tend to chase people who don't look that closely or are too tired to look that closely because that keeps us safe from being vulnerable ourselves. That keeps us safe from being exposed in a way that we fear might lead us to being truly rejected, right? Or might really expose our unlovableness or whatever it is. And the vagueness also creates this really fuzzy distraction from really getting into what are the brass tacks things that are going on here, right? And that's not just you, that's her too. She's being super vague because it's too exhausting, because she's afraid. It's just fear. And she's just surrendering to living in fear. That is exhausting. But when you get over the fear and you allow yourself to show up very honestly to a relationship, clarity comes quite easily. In fact, it's effortless. Okay. So I hope that helps. Thank you all for joining me here on our live stream today. And I will be popping back in again in the next couple of weeks with a new video series. And I suspect we'll probably be looking at different types of toxic communications and how to deal with that. Thank you, everybody. I so appreciate your time. And I hope you